Hello there, and welcome back to the podcast. I am really excited about this one because as we've been talking about the perception gap and really what goes into that, I thought, what better way to really bring this to life than to take you behind the scenes of my most recent launch of Market Like a CEO and talk about the data that I'm seeing that really influences a lot of what we're talking about during these seasons. So, this is going to be a two-part short series because I'm pulling back the curtain on the latest launch for Market Like a CEO, like I mentioned, and giving you the real unfiltered breakdown of what worked, what didn't, and the biggest lessons I'm taking with me into the next launch. So let's be honest, it's so easy to see a successful launch from the outside and assume it's just about the sales and that everything is working well, especially when you see things going good. And don't get me wrong, this was a really successful launch. I'm really proud of it, and I can't wait to break down the mechanics of everything. But I'm also really excited just to share with you about how I really approach this launch differently than how I've ever launched in the past 8 years of my business. And really how specifically selling a new offer right now in today's climate is all about building trust. It's all about shifting beliefs. It's all about honoring the pace at which people are making decisions right now and how I specifically was able to reduce that perceived risk to really help my audience see themselves in the solution that I was offering. So in part one, we're going to be digging into why I took a 90-day runway to selling this offer and how that really changed a lot of things for me and why I felt that was a really good move. The strategies that worked way better than I had expected, the numbers that really blew my mind, and the surprises that really caught me off guard. But listen, this is just the first half of the story. In part two, I'll spill a tea on what didn't work, the mistakes I made, and exactly what I'm doing differently next time so that you don't want to miss this one or the next one. So make sure to listen to both parts. So let's get into the behind the scenes. And before we get into today's episode, I just have to again say thank you. Y'all have been showing up and showing out on Apple Podcasts, leaving reviews on Spotify, and I just really want to take a moment to say thank you. So I want to give a shout out to Styled by Tiffany O. She said truth and honesty. I've been listening to the Jereshia podcast for years. I've enjoyed watching her growth and evolution throughout the years. This season is her best one yet. I'm like, thank you, girl. She's still snatching edges and keeping it real, but it's different. There's a sense of peace. This season was really resonated with me as she spoke about how we tend to abandon ourselves, and I can relate to that. Thank you for always being you and being my coach in my head. Tiffany, thank you so much. It just means the world to me that you guys take a moment to leave a review and leave your thoughts for this podcast. Because that's how new people are able to discover it. You know, it organically grows because you share it with a friend or it gets promoted over on iTunes. So if you do take a moment to leave a review, it means the world to me. And I look forward to giving you a shout out on an upcoming episode. So let's get into this. I have my notes nearby. If you're watching this on YouTube, you will see I am on my couch, honey. Okay. This is raw, unfiltered. It's no makeup on, but I want to give it to you straight. So let's get into it. Okay. So let's start with, what worked and the strategy, the wins and the surprises. So first thing I really want to set the tone is like how I approach this launch differently. The biggest thing for me about the launch of this offer was I'm in a really beautiful, steady place in my business right now. And I think that when you are creating something from a place of steadiness, it changes your entire energy and it changes your entire relationship around launching and selling something new. And I think that that is something I really want to set the tone with and really establish this with, because I created this offer not out of desperation. I created this offer not from a place of I have to make money, not from a place of pressure that I was putting on myself or pressure that was happening in my cash flow or making payroll or trying to figure out overhead expenses in my business. I think when you can create something from that place, it just felt like the early days of like when I very first started my business. And I was creating this offer purely out of creative overflow. I created this because it was a need I was consistently seeing. As I've been working with all of my private one-on-one clients, messaging is something that I work on with every single client that I work with, because a lot of the time people think it's their offer, if they're having a difficult time with their sales page converting, if they're having a difficult time even reconnecting with their marketing and figuring out what to say in their sales emails or their sales, on their social media posts. A lot of the time there is a disconnect that is happening with the messaging, which makes it difficult to do any of those sales related actions. And messaging is such a core piece of what is the disconnect in people's businesses. So I knew that that was a common theme that I was seeing. And it's just something that I think when people think of Jereshia Hawk, they think of messaging, they think of, lean, they think of profitability, they think of increasing take-home pay. It's like a core pillar that people associate with me. So I want to say that, I think that is something I'm really grateful for, that I was in a season where I was creating from a place of overflow, not from a place of scarcity or pressure or performance. And that was a huge shift because it allowed me to create an offer that really was just me in my element, not me trying to perform for the algorithm or not me trying to perform out of pressure to hit cash flow requirements to make payroll or to get through some financial crutch. And that really did change the relationship with the launch because I didn't feel rushed. I didn't feel like I needed this Hail Mary activity. I just didn't go into the launch so tight and so stressed. And I also, the reason why I created this offer, Market Like a CEO, it was a brand new offer. I've taught messaging in all of my core group coaching programs, but from a different lens. I taught messaging specifically for people who were selling group programs. And I teach messaging in my private one-on-one offers, but I never had a consolidated place that really breaks down the mechanics of just messaging and helping a student who's going through the course decide, what level of sophistication they need to be speaking at within their messaging, kind of regardless of the type of offer they're selling. And I was really proud to be able to create that. So I created it for a few different reasons. One, I created it because it's something that is repeatedly coming up with my private one-on-one clients, and I wanted a centralized resource that I could give to all of my private clients. So instead of me creating this and only giving it to my clients, I decided this is probably a good opportunity to turn this into an offer. The second reason why I created it is because I have never sold a digital course that was a true digital course ever in my business. I have always sold offers that came with live coaching components as part of the core offer. I've never just created a digital course to just sell it as a digital course. So it was something that's been on my parking lot list in my business for years. And it's something I wanted to test out. I'm like, what does it feel like for me to create this, knowing that the material needs to be able to stand alone, even if it doesn't have a live coaching component attached to it to help the client achieve the promise of the offer. So that was another kind of experimentation that I really wanted to see how it would land. And I really wanted to see how my audience would respond to me not selling a high ticket offer that came with close proximity and higher level of coaching support built into the core offer. I think that's something else for me. People have definitely look at me as the millionaire maker. They look at me as the country club of the coaching industry. I've been known for high ticket. That's how I've built my business over the last 8 years. And what would it look like for me to sell an offer for, less than around the $300 price point, and see how it performs out there being a live coaching component that's built into the core offer. And the third thing was that I was totally detached from the outcome, which again is a really beautiful place to be in when you are creating something new. So I want to give you that background on why the offer, setting the scene there, and kind of where I was coming from when creating this. So why this launch mattered in the long game vision. So again, I really did break down why I created this offer, but I felt it was very timely. I think a lot of people are noticing this shift in buyer behavior. People are kind of coining this our trust recession. People are in a season right now where it's not that people are not paying attention, but buyers are just much more discerning. They are slower to make a buying decision. They are using higher levels of critical thinking before they swipe their credit card. And it's how do you sell given those parameters? So this is something that is a common issue that I'm seeing across the board for my audience who is struggling with that as a core problem, and messaging is the solution to that. So my audience I was clear that my audience needed this, and it felt like a timely thing to offer. I felt very called to do it, so it was kind of a win-win there. So one of the big decisions that I made was to give myself a 90-day runway to sell this offer instead of creating a short cart open launch. And part of the reason why I say 90 days, even for a low ticket offer, is because a lot of what is already being discussed. One, people are taking longer to make a buying decision. And if I know that, I'm like, okay, how do I just respect that and build that into the launch cycle versus me trying to allow my ego to override that and say, "Well, I'm Jereshia. I've been doing this for 8 years. People should just buy from me," which is something that I think is a very common private thought that many of us who are more established business owners feel, but will not publicly admit. And I'm calling you out if this is you. And if you do feel this way, like, girl, I see you. Because I think when you have built a reputation for yourself and you've been doing something for a long time and people know you for your receipts, I think there is this expectancy that we can privately have that it's like, well, it's me doing this. If I launch it, it should sell out within seconds. Like, I don't get why I need to convince my audience of this or work with my audience or still have to do the effort of marketing. And I'm just here to tell you this. I made over $6 million in my business. I still took a 90-day runway for an offer that was selling around the $300 price point. Do not let your ego get in the way of what your audience needs. And we've been talking a lot about that during this season of the episode, but I just want to call that out. So I did a 90-day runway because I had the time. My business was steady. Cash flow was stable. Everything right now was good and harmonious. And again, I didn't put this pressure on myself to do a Hail Mary activity. So the reason why I did this, again, I wanted to give my audience time to think and also to really, again, help reduce perceived risk. Not just risk as it associated with me or is messaging the actual problem, but that higher level of discernment my buyer is applying to their decision-making right now. I wanted to give them the time to really think through, look at their cash flow, decide if this was a problem they wanted to solve. And I wanted to make sure that I had my own messaging and my own marketing efforts that were influencing that entire process. I also really wanted to build trust over time, not just relying on urgency, fast action bonuses, or my reputation to do the thing to get people across the finish line. And about building trust over time, and we talk a little bit about this inside of the course Market Like a CEO, but it's not just trust in me. It's not just trust in the solution that I am selling them. Those two things are important. But I also really wanted to take the time to build trust within themselves and in their ability to discern whether or not messaging was something they needed to prioritize their effort, money, and attention towards in their own business, and trust their own decision-making as it related to that. And I think that is something that is missing in a lot of people's launches. Even when I'm coaching my clients, it's a common thing that gets skipped over is how is your messaging and your marketing and what you're saying and how you're talking with your audience in the process of selling them something. How are you helping to teach them to trust themselves in the decision-making as it relates to the offer? And how is your messaging kind of orchestrating that aspect of the conversation? And so that's, again, part of the reason why I gave a longer runway. And I'll break down a little bit about that runway here in just a minute. The third reason why is because this was a brand new offer. Like, I think that, even though I've been in business 8 years, this is still a new offer in my business. A new offer in the sense of the actual solution that it was providing, a new offer in the sense of the price point that I was selling it at and how people kind of relate to me with that type of price point offer. And it was a new offer in the delivery and the fact that it was a digital course and not like a group coaching or a private one-on-one. It wasn't a retreat. It was a digital offer. Even for a warm audience, this was something new they haven't seen from me. So I took all those things into consideration as to why I did a 90-day runway. And I want to break down kind of what that runway was. So let me pull up my notes real quick here so I don't miss anything. But really the runway kind of broke down into 3 phases. I did a list growth and a warm lead runway in the sense of I used a messaging guide. It was an opt-in that was very much directly tied to the core concept of what this course was going to be about. And even really before that, before I even made the messaging guide, I did a couple weeks of me testing out carousels on my Instagram feed. And I noticed that my highest performing content was around messaging. Every time I did a carousel that broke down some attribute of messaging, it would perform like 10 times better than all of my other posts in that same time frame. And that was an early indicator that, hey, your audience is really craving this type of content. And I think for me, instead of me asking my audience, hey, do you guys want me to create a messaging course? Instead of me asking my audience, I start framing the conversation through my content. And I pay attention to the data and how people react and respond to the content, which really influences whether or not I choose to move that idea forward into an actual offer or if I choose to move that angle of messaging into a core messaging component of how I'm like shaping the conversation and the narrative when I'm during a launch. So I did a few posts around messaging, and there was one that really took off about the messaging shifts that you have to change when you're going from $1,000 offer to a $10,000 offer. And that carousel performed so well. That was like an early indicator. I did a few weeks of just testing messaging around a potential idea of what the offer might be. Okay, so those carousels and Instagram content and the feedback I got from that is what led me to then turning that carousel that performed really well into an opt-in. So I took the basically the core components of that carousel, and I flushed it out a little bit more, giving some more, context that was not able to be included in the actual carousel, and that became a messaging guide opt-in, which I'll break down. So that was all part of the warm-up. There was probably about 3 weeks of me just building up an interest list based off of messaging in that messaging guide. That was an opt-in to get people on my email list. Once I did that, I went into a wait list phase. And this was something that worked really, really well, is that this was really, again, getting these warm leads to identify that, yes, I'm interested in this specific thing, and like nurturing my high interest leads. So I did a full month of driving people to the wait list for the course. And the incentive, I gave an incentive for people to join the wait list, which I do think is really a smart thing to do, especially right now. Instead of just saying, hey, join my wait list, which you totally can do. I knew I had a longer runway, so I wanted to create some incentive as to why somebody should join the wait list. And the incentive that I gave is that when you join the wait list, you get early access to lesson 1 of the course. So that to me is like a high interest lead, because they're not just joining the wait list maybe because they might be nosy, but it's like they also now get a taste of what the offer is going to be before they have to buy it. And I think that is, again, something in this trust recession and with AI and with digital courses, there's just so much information, so many people about so many digital courses that they've never used and never even opened up, which again contributes to their perceived risk as like, should I buy this course when I know that I've bought other courses and haven't even looked at them yet? That way, I at least was able to give people a taste and also build that trust, because they're able to see a taste of what their course is going to be like before they even buy it. So that was a really effective strategy. And then I did a 1-week open cart that was direct sales and direct conversion focused. So it was like a social content, kind of validating the concept, a lead magnet to kind of get warm leads and kind of see what that warm lead pool was going to be, a month up wait list that was with that incentive of early access to module 1, and then open cart for 1 week. So those are the 3 phases during that 90 days. And this is what worked kind of even more and further. So the messaging guide, again, that was a pre-qualification tool to validate the idea and to get those first initial hand raisers. And that about 9% of the people who downloaded that messaging guide ended up buying the course. So not huge in conversions, but it did support it. Now, the thing that really did pop off was the wait list. 14% of people who joined the wait list converted. But the thing that even kind of opened my eyes even more is that when we sold the course, there was also a mini mind upgrade where you could pay another $1,000 and you could join a live messaging mini mind, which was 3 group coaching calls. 79% of people who purchased the mini mind upgrade were also on the wait list. So when I talk about really nurturing my warmest leads and those high interest leads, those high interest doing the wait list, those high interest leads were the almost 80% of people who bought the mini mind and upgraded came from that wait list. So it's really not just a holding pen, your wait list. It gave early access to lesson 1, which was game changer, but the most interested people who paid the most money and chose the upgrade also came from that. Email was really big for me this time as well. Since coming back from sabbatical, I've really wanted to leverage my email list more strategically, because over the years I have not. And that was also part of the test here to see like how much, sales wise, where sales were coming from. So 55% of my buyers came from my email list. And that just means that 55% of people who bought clicked at least one email that sent them to the sales page. So I want to, highlight that. I feel like email was a really big strategy here in doing the wait list. And, if we look at the wait list, about 14%, the messaging guide, 9%. a little over 20, about a quarter of sales came because of a wait list in the messaging guide. So that warm up part of the process was really important. And I really layered the content. So I mirrored my Instagram posts. I really tested all of the messaging for the launch through Instagram, primarily carousels and my Instagram stories, but primarily my Instagram newsfeed posts and my carousels and a handful of reels. The content that performed the best, I took the same messaging from those posts and turned those into emails. So it was really there was a lot of like healthy repetition after the messaging was already validated on social. I also use Instagram stories to help, because I know my warmest leads are watching my stories. I use those same conversations and messaging that was working in my stories, turn those into emails. And then also for a short period of time, I leverage my podcast. I would do dynamic ads to send people to the messaging guide, dynamic ads to send people to the wait list, and then dynamic ads when cart was open to send people to purchase the offer. So again, I just wanted to create kind of multiple touch points in this ecosystem. And again, I think we're in a day and age where used to be a time where you could have one channel, send a few emails and make, have a 6-figure launch. Now I think you need a multi-channel approach. And my multi-channel is Instagram, my podcast, and email. That's my like triangle effect of really where my ecosystem is. So that was what really worked. There was one other metric that I think blew my mind. Okay, blew my mind. Out of the people who visited my sales page and actually clicked a button to go to the checkout page, 84% of people who viewed my sales page went to the checkout page. 84%. I don't think I've ever seen a number that high. When I even shared that with one of my business coach, she was like, I have never seen a number that high of people who went from a sales page to a checkout page. And I think that was something very telling for me, that first and foremost, there was a high level of interest in the content, in the offer, in the solution that I was providing. And there's some things I'm going to discuss in part 2 on what I'll do differently next time. But 84% of people who viewed the sales page went to the checkout page. That lets me know the messaging on that sales page was spot on. The positioning of the actual offer was doing the job that it was supposed to do. Like, that was bananas. So those are some high-level things that worked really well. A few other things that I did is that towards the end of the launch, I included a Loom video as a quick walkthrough of the course, like probably 48 hours before the launch closed. Nearly 1 in 5 people who watched bought the course. And again, I think this just goes to show people want to know what they are buying without having to take the risk of purchasing it and then not being able to get a refund, because most of us selling digital courses have a no refund policy. So people want to see what they are going to get. And I really try to do that in my content as well, in my storytelling, in my emails, but then through the wait list with early access to module 1, but also like show people what they're about to get. So I recorded a Loom video. I'll talk about what I'll do differently next time about that. And the other thing that really surprised me too is that about 52% of people who bought were first-time buyers to me, which also means 48% of people who bought have purchased from me before. So there was, I think it was like, it was a good mix of people who were familiar with me, who had never purchased from me before, and kind of what their buying behavior was. So, I think that's a pretty good tell that the messaging did a good job of getting people who didn't know me or have never purchased from me before to get them to trust me to want to buy. But also it let me know too that this is very much aligned with my existing audience and like an issue that they have. Even if people have bought from me before, this would be a reason why they would buy again. The other reason too, I want to say what worked in regards to why I picked this topic as a course. And this is a bigger business model conversation that has been coming up a lot inside of the messaging mini mind. If you are selling multiple offers, especially if you're around those critical revenue thresholds in your business, at that $150,000 to $200,000, and then again at about $350,000 to $400,000, those are like critical thresholds in business revenue where like fundamentally your business model needs to change in order for you to get to the next threshold. And one thing that I did notice for myself, part of the reason why I picked this topic is because private one-on-one right now is the nucleus of my business model. So any offer that I sell needs to be in service of what my most qualified lead is navigating and dealing with as it relates to them being a private one-on-one client of mine. So part of the reason why I chose to do Market Like a CEO and chose messaging as the solution that was being sold in the offer It is also because it is a core issue that many of my private one-on-one clients have. And if we can fix this issue, it makes somebody, it contributes to the qualification and the alignment of what a one-on-one client would need if they would want to work with me. And I think that is something that, if you do want me to kind of talk about this more in depth, send me a DM on Instagram or leave it in the podcast review when you publish that on Apple Podcast, or leave it in the comments if you're watching on YouTube, because I do think there's a bigger conversation about how do you structure your offers to support your overall revenue and support your business growth. But how do you do it in a way without causing confusion in your messaging? Because when you have multiple offers that are not really structured together in an appropriate manner, it makes your messaging very, very difficult to do, and it convolutes your marketing efforts. So that was something else I want to make sure that I highlight of what worked, is I picked a topic that's still very much correlated to what my private one-on-one clients would need and what would qualify somebody to be a private one-on-one client with me. But it really builds that in. Like, somebody can take Market Like a CEO, go through the course and be like, okay, kind of regardless of what season of business that they're in, it just contributes to why they would want to work with me privately one-on-one. It doesn't distract from that. So those are some of the metrics that worked and what worked really, really well. The other thing I thought was really interesting was the pace at which clients were able to finish the course. I mean, within I don't even know, a week, 24% of people who bought the course finished it. And I am really proud of that because, one, when they finished the course, I had feedback submission forms in there, 5-star reviews across the board. People were leaving the most beautiful reviews. And I think part of the reason is because I created the course to be in a way where it could be really digested in about 3 hours. But it was very, every module really built upon each other. There was a decision that you had to make at the end of every single module. So it was very action oriented. And it really allowed people to take what they were learning and immediately apply it versus feeling like they were just getting 3 hours of a lecture and still didn't know what to do with it. And that was really the feedback that I got about how things finally started to click for people. They were able to get out of these content ruts that they had been in where they kind of lost touch with their messaging, didn't know what to say anymore in their marketing. So I'm really proud of that. So those are some of the metrics that really stood out and the things that surprised me. And the final thing I want to really talk through was the emotional side and personal reflection. So what felt harder than I expected? Honestly, this launch was probably one of the lightest launches I've ever had. And I think it really contributed to a lot of what I just shared at the beginning of this about, there wasn't this pressure to perform. I was totally detached from the outcome. I was like, if one person buys this and it makes them, gets them the result I'm hoping this will get them, I'm satisfied. If my private clients can take this and it helps them speed up their ability to learn what we're trying to navigate in a private one-on-one, this is a success. So I think that me being in a very steady place in my own business and a very stable place in my own business and creating and launching from that was a really beautiful thing. The other thing that felt different was leading a launch without the dopamine hits of the old dopamine that I would get from quick sales. There were a lot of quick sales that happened during this launch, and it feels really great to see those Stripe notifications pop up on your screen. But my identity has shifted in my relationship to my business. And it felt really good to see those Stripe notifications and to not be sent into this extreme high. Yes, I was happy and joyful. Every time somebody bought, I wrote your name down on a Post-it note and put it up on my wall in my office. And it was a celebratory thing. As I hit certain metrics, I romanticized that and I had rewards for me at the different milestones that I hit. But it wasn't this dopamine high. I think how I used to launch, when a sale would come in, I would shoot up through the roof. But if there was one day and I sent out an email and a sale didn't happen immediately, I would go down to a deep low. It was literally a high, and then you're on withdrawal. And I think that was something that my relationship to this launch was very different. I think that had a lot to do with me going on sabbatical and all this work that I've been doing, being in a steady place, having a different relationship with my business. Is that good things can happen and I still feel pretty neutral. Things can go maybe not as expected and I still feel pretty neutral. Versus me having these wild emotional roller coaster whirlwinds. And I think that's a huge testament to my own growth, which I'm really proud of. The mindset shifts that I made during this launch is like, one, be willing to be seen trying. Again, I think as an established business owner who has built a reputation for herself, who, I think doing something different that I'm not used to doing, selling a lower ticket offer, which is like really counterintuitive to a lot of the core messaging about what I've taught in the past. There is a little bit of like hesitation around that, but I would like be willing to allow yourself to be seen trying and let go of the ego, let go of this, reputation or whatever you've kind of tied yourself into in this box you put yourself in. Do what feels good, do what you believe is going to be in service to your audience and to your existing clients, and create from that place. And I think that was a really good exercise for me. The other mindset shift that I had got here was, really just like trusting the long game. Like I think that in 8 years of business really does teach you that like things do not happen overnight. And I think before I used to look at my business in a week by week, month by month thing. I now look at the business and like 6 month, 1 year, 2 year chunks. It's like me testing this out today is going to be influencing. And quite honestly, part of the reason why I am testing this out is because I'm like family planning. Like, no, I'm not pregnant today, but I'm thinking about the next 2 or 3 years. What is my business model going to look like? And I'm like using now as a testing ground to see what is it like selling a digital course? How does that feel? Will this potentially be an offer or a lever that I can pull 2 years from now when I'm on maternity leave or something like that? And I think that is something that, again, my maturity as a business owner has evolved. That neutrality in my emotional regulation, it contributes to that. And again, I'm in a steady, healthy place in business where it's like all those things kind of together gives me the calm and the peace and the ease and the exhale to be able to play a long-term game versus frantically doing things month by month, week by week, because I'm trying, because you're stressed out and you don't even have the emotional regulation, or your nervous system cannot handle you thinking that long term or making decisions today that will impact you that long term because you're just trying to get through this next week or this next month. Probably one of the biggest wins here is just staying in integrity and in alignment. Even if it felt quote unquote slower than how I would have perceived like this type of thing a couple of years ago. And I think that also really was felt by my audience. The clients that are in the messaging mini mind, like I'm still getting DMs from people who are finishing the course or who are in the messaging mini mind with me, just thanking me for creating this offer and them just noticing a difference in my own energy. Like one of the people who bought the course messaged me afterwards and she was like, I really hope you do a debrief because you felt like this launch, witnessing you felt like you were at such ease. And I'm like, I'm really proud to say that that was true. I think a lot of the time we see people do launches and it like, are they at ease? That they're portraying that, but behind the scenes, it's chaos and it's a shit show. And there was no shit show over here. It was just easeful. It was well paced out, both for me and I think for my audience. And that led to really successful results. So that's a high level overview of what worked, really what surprised me, what I'm most proud of for this launch. In the next episode, part 2, we're going to get into the real about what didn't work, the mistakes I made, what I would do differently next time. So you can skip the headaches, hopefully learn something from me as well. But I can't wait to see you in that, chat with you in that next episode. And then also, if there was anything that you've learned, or if you have any takeaways or additional questions, please feel free just to send me a DM over on Instagram. I would love to continue the conversation. But I will see you in the next episode, just breaking down what I would do differently, what didn't work, and I can't wait to see you there.